Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier session related to consolidated financial statements, we discussed about what are the various financial statements that are to be consolidated, which are nothing but all the financial statements normally a company prepares. If it has any subsidiaries, it has to also prepare, in addition to its own standalone financial statements, the consolidated financial statements also, including balance sheet, P&L, cash flows and notes to accounts. And we observed if the date of acquisition and date of balance sheet are same, consolidation process is very simple, though it will not be the case in exam questions. But the basic way of doing the consolidation is just to add up the assets and liabilities of holding and subsidiary company and eliminating the investment on the asset side of the holding company's balance sheet, at the same time eliminating the equity portion of subsidiary company on the liability side of its balance sheet, and while doing so identifying minority interest is the major aspect in consolidation, and this is the most important aspect. You should read it also thoroughly. These are the steps involved in consolidation. More thorough we are with these steps, easier it will become to solve the problems. So computation of goodwill or capital reserve definitely is one of the most important aspects. Intra-group transactions, if any, definitely have to be eliminated. Unrealized profits have to be also adjusted. We will see that. Minority interest has to be calculated, which relates to the interest of the minority shareholders on the date of acquisition. Also after the date of acquisition, they do have a share in both those items. How much is their share has to be calculated. These are various crucial steps. In addition to this, if any other information is given in the question as an adjustment item, definitely we have to deal with that accordingly. And what is goodwill and what is capital reserve also we have discussed extensively. Basically, goodwill or capital reserve, broadly we can call it as cost of control, is the difference between the cost of investment or cost of acquisition of shares in subsidiary minus the parent's share in the equity of the subsidiary on the date of investment. The difference between these two. If it is positive, it is goodwill. If it is negative, it is capital reserve. And another important aspect, particularly when the date of acquisition is not at the beginning of the year, rather if it is somewhere in the middle of the year, then another important classification has to be done as to what are pre-acquisition profits and what are post-acquisition profits. And main point here to note is minorities will have a share in both of them, no doubt. As far as the holding company's financials are concerned, pre-acquisition profits of subsidiary and its share of pre-acquisition profits shall be treated as capital in nature. Post-acquisition profits of the subsidiary and naturally the share of holding company in the post-acquisition profits of subsidiary shall be treated as revenue in nature, which should be added to P&L account. Whereas the pre-acquisition profits have to be adjusted while calculating the cost of control because of they being capital in nature. So this nature of pre and post acquisition profits is also very, very important point to be noted and understood and remembered. And also we discussed about the classification of dividend. Same logic. If at all dividend is declared by a subsidiary company and holding company received that dividend from such subsidiary company, what has to be checked is whether that dividend is declared out of pre-acquisition profits or post-acquisition profits. Naturally, if it is out of post-acquisition profits, no problem, it is a revenue item, it will be treated as a profit or loss of the holding company. But in case the dividends are declared out of pre-acquisition profits, then they have to be reduced from the investment or the cost of investment or cost of acquisition. In other words, once again, the adjustment will happen while calculating the cost of control, that is goodwill or capital reserve calculation. We'll discuss this dividend portion extensively once again in detail in the present class. But by now, I hope you have practiced this computation of minority interest and goodwill or capital reserve from this question. That just gives us a bit of practice on computational aspects of minority interest and cost of control. So these were the very crucial aspects that we discussed in the previous session, the introductory session of the chapter consolidated financial statements. So once again, everybody should be by now thorough with the process of consolidation, understand the computation of goodwill or capital reserve, computation of minority interest, and distinction between pre and post acquisition profits. These are crucial items which we discussed. Dividends, we touched it earlier. What is the ideal treatment? We know already. That is, if dividends are declared out of post-acquisition profits, then it is basically revenue in nature. There is no big deal in that. But now let us say different permutations, combinations, which might be given in the question. For example, if the dividends are declared by the subsidiary company out of post-acquisition profits only, but they are already accounted for by the subsidiary, then there is no need of further adjustment. If they are not accounted for by the subsidiary at the time of consolidation, they have to be accounted for naturally. That is about in the books of subsidiary, which anyway generally will not happen, because subsidiary would have accounted for these items. If not, also that has to be accounted for now before consolidation. By the way, we have to adjust this in the books of subsidiary. Books means we are not going to go to their books and pass any journal entries, but balance sheet items of subsidiary have to be adjusted accordingly if the dividends are declared out of post acquisition profits of subsidiary. But main point here is in the books of holding company, because that is where we are preparing consolidated financial statements. So how the holding company will treat, as we already know, that has to be accounted for by crediting to the P&L account of holding company as a revenue item, as a revenue profit. It should be added to the P&L account of holding company. That's a profit or a gain for holding company received from subsidiary company in the form of post-acquisition dividend. So only if at all any additional things have to be done is when, if it is clearly mentioned in the question that the dividends are not accounted for by the subsidiary. If this is given, then only we might have to redraft. If not redraft, at least understand the change in the numbers of the balance sheet of subsidiary. Exceptional case, but anything is possible in the exam questions. So if such thing happens, if subsidiary has not dealt with it already in its balance sheet, we will deal with it. What is there? Anyway, it is only a journal entry. For example, if the subsidiary did not account for it, now we have to account for it. Means what? Definitely the reserves of the subsidiary will go down and cash balance of the subsidiary also will go down. So what entry? We don't need to pass an entry, but if it is asked, we have to. If it is not asked, we have to do the adjustment only, that reserves of the subsidiary are reduced, cash of the subsidiary also reduced. So the entry would be reserves account at R2, cash account or bank account. If it is not accounted for by subsidiary, just the balance sheet numbers of subsidiary will change a bit. Naturally, being a journal entry, it will have both impacts, debit and credit. But in general, when nothing is mentioned, everything is already taken care of by subsidiary. Our job will be mainly to focus on holding companies' consolidated financial statements. That is why the post-acquisition dividend received by the holding company shall be credited to the P&L account of the holding company as a revenue profit. That is the treatment. The same thing what we already know, but we are only looking at some other possibilities also. Then what about the pre-acquisition dividend? If pre-acquisition dividend is accounted for by the holding company already, then fantastic. And it is correctly accounted for also. Like what? by way of reduction to the cost of investment. That's what they are supposed to do. Normally speaking, if it is a pre-acquisition dividend, we are talking about holding company. Ideally, what entry they should have passed will be cash or bank account that are to investment account. So the cost of investment should have been reduced with this pre-acquisition dividend that they received from the subsidiary company. Ideally, that is the treatment. And this we should already know, according to S13 also it is the same. But if they really treated it well, we don't need to do any further adjustment. Already it is done. So what is there for us to do? Nothing in that. So such situation will not be there. What will be given in the question in general is, the holding company wrongly accounted for it by crediting to P&L account. So what entry they supposed to pass? They were supposed to pass an entry called bank account at R to investment account. Now what they passed, who the holding company, is bank account at R to P&L account. We have to rectify. We have to rectify that. So what should we do that rectification? Bank anyway has received. If it was received, bank account is already debited correctly, there is no problem. If that is not credited to the investment account but credited to the P&L account, we have to reverse the entry that has been passed. I would say rather than reverse, we have to rectify the entry that has been passed. What is the rectification entry here? P&L account was unnecessarily credited. Now we should debit it, means reduce the amount from the P&L account balance. And what should be credited ideally is investment account. That means reduce the investment account also, which is an asset. So entry, if at all we have to pass, would be P&L account at R2 investment account, in case they have passed a wrong entry. But in general, while doing the process of consolidation, we don't pass any entries and all. Only we focus on preparation of balance sheet. As I said, this is not a transaction and all. This is only a process of consolidation, which is a reporting process. That is why entry we should know for conceptual purposes, to know the debit and credit aspects. But in the exam questions, what we should do? If the holding company has treated the dividend that it has received from subsidiary company wrongly, what should we do? Simply, we should reduce the cost of investment with the same amount, and we should also reduce cost of investment is debit, if you remember. Investments, right? That should be reduced. It means we credited it. And we should also reduce the P&L account balance of holding company, because they have unnecessarily credited it. So reduction from P&L account of holding company, reduction from the cost of acquisition of shares by holding company of the subsidiary company is the treatment. If there is a mistake that is given in the question, don't assume things. Whatever is given in the question, that only will have to be adjusted. Then, so what if it is not accounted by holding company at all? That is better than rectification and all. We account for it now. How? We account for it by reducing the cost of investment. Now, of course, if it has not accounted for at all, both debit and credit are not accounted for, then bank account also has to be debited. But in general, if it is given that it is not accounted for, we have to understand, we have to adjust both the debit and credit. So we cannot only say, I will reduce the cost of investment and keep quiet. Naturally, problem will arise. Why? Once again, always we have to keep in mind, we are having in front of us two tallied balance sheets. Anything that we do which is having an impact on these balance sheets has to have both debit and credit aspects. Then only the final balance sheet that we prepare will tally. So that is why, depending upon the information given in the question, we have to come out with our solution. But for that, we should know concept first. Simply, what is the concept? Post-acquisition dividend is of revenue in nature, so the holding company can happily credit it to the P&L account. Whether it did it, not did it, we don't know. That will be given in the question. But ideally, that's what they are supposed to do. Same way, pre-acquisition dividend that is received by the holding company should have been reduced from the cost of investment. That is the treatment. How they did it, whether they did it or not, that depends upon the question. Then, in case, if it is not accounted by subsidiary company also, this is a rare scenario, but if it is not accounted by subsidiary company, of course it has to be adjusted at the time of consolidation. In other words, we need to redraft the balance sheet of subsidiary first before consolidation. That is the best way. We don't need to redraft the entire balance sheet. Whichever items will have a change, those items can be changed, and then only we can start the process of consolidation. That's it. So that is the treatment related to pre-acquisition dividend. And once we know that it is pre-acquisition dividend, naturally the thing that a holding company has to do, that will continue. Whatever the pre-acquisition profit of subsidiary is there, the dividend is declared from that profit, so that pre-acquisition profit has to be reduced, and then that has to be distributed among holding company and minority interest, naturally. And that portion of holding company's dividend share in the pre-acquisition profits shall be reduced from the cost of investment. So it is same as this treatment at the time of consolidation, but before doing the treatment in holding company, we have to first deal with subsidiary company because they have not accounted for it. Once again, don't assume any of these scenarios. None of these scenarios cannot be assumed. It has to be given in the question. If it is nothing is given, simply speaking, we just have to treat this as if it is accounted for by holding company also, subsidiary company also correctly only. We cannot assume that it is a mistake, we are here to rectify it and all. If they did not account for it, naturally adjusting is our job. If subsidiary itself did not treat it, first we should change the balance sheet of subsidiary, and then we have to treat it accordingly in the holding company's books also, while preparing the consolidated financial statements in the books of holding company. So that is the treatment of dividend, as we already discussed in a very nutshell earlier. Now little bit detailed manner, how pre-acquisition and post-acquisition dividend has to be treated is a very important aspect. In many questions, this will be definitely one line item of adjustments. So we should know the treatment very thoroughly. Now let us understand the application of this with this example. Read the examples carefully. XYZ Limited purchased 80% shares of ABC Limited on 1st January 2016 for 1,40,000 rupees. So already I told you, certain facts have to be very clearly identified in any problem. Small, big, doesn't matter. What are the facts which are clearly to be identified? First and foremost thing, what is the subsidiary company? Who is the subsidiary company and who is the holding company? That has to be identified clearly. Second, percentage of shareholding by holding and minorities. How much holding company holds in subsidiary, how much minorities hold in subsidiary. But once again, sir, what if there is no minority? Let us understand that if there is no minority, there is nothing for us to do also. What is the great process of consolidation? Add everything, there ends the matter. So that is why such questions cannot be expected. So 100% holding is not something that we need to do any great job. That is why definitely in the questions of examination, there will be some minority interest. Holding company will hold more than 50%, but definitely less than 100%. So what is that percentage of holding has to be definitely identified. And the third important fact you have to identify in the question is the date of acquisition. What is the date of acquisition? And of course, what is the date of consolidation, that is preparation of financial statements, what we are doing. So these dates are important, percentages are important. Of course, the fact that who is a subsidiary and who is a holding company is also important to observe. In this particular case, XYZ Limited purchased shares of ABC Limited means XYZ Limited is holding company, ABC Limited is subsidiary company. Okay. Date of acquisition 1st January 2016. Cost of acquisition 1,40,000 rupees. You just purchased shares, that's all. The issued capital of ABC Limited, that is subsidiary, on that date, 1st January 2016, was 1 lakh rupees, and the balance in the profit and loss account was 60,000 rupees. Okay. Then, during the year ended 31st December 2016, so we are talking about the date of consolidation, 31st December 2016. Date of acquisition, 1st January 2016. A full year is there. So pre-acquisition, post-acquisition, split within the year is not required. Within the year it is not required, because a complete year has passed by after the shares of ABC Limited were acquired by XYZ Limited. But during this year of 2016, ABC Limited earned a profit of 20,000 rupees, and at the year end declared and paid a dividend of 15,000 rupees. So that is the point. Show by an entry how the dividend should be recorded in the books of XYZ Limited. So that is the question here. When the company, subsidiary company, declared a dividend of 15,000 rupees at the year end. That is first point of the question. Second part of the question is, what is the amount of minority interest as on 1st January 2016 and 31st December 2016? Also, please check whether there is any goodwill or capital reserve. So there are three things here which are mentioned in one question. So we have to calculate, first of all, minority interest. Also, we have to calculate goodwill or capital reserve. Also, we have to show how the dividend should be recorded in the books of XYZ Limited. Let us best, it is always better to go in the time sequence. 1st January comes before 31st December of 2016. So first let us look at the date of acquisition and story, what happened actually on that date. So on that date, what happened? Which date we are talking about? That is 1st January 2016. What was the capital of ABC Limited on that date? Capital of ABC Limited on that date was 1 lakh rupees. That was given already, right? That was 1 lakh rupees on the 1st January 2016, and balance of P&L account on that day, P&L account balance on that day of ABC Limited, this also is 60,000. That is also given already. So the total, you can say the equity of ABC Limited on that day will be 1,60,000 rupees. Now, that was the total equity of subsidiary on the date of acquisition, 1,60,000 rupees. In this 1,60,000 rupees, how much will be related to the holding company and how much will be going to the minority interest? Holding company holds 80% shares. So 80% of 1,60,000 will be 1,28,000. Minorities will naturally have 20% of 1,60,000. That comes to 32,000. That is on the date of acquisition. That is clear. Now, the holding company's share in the equity of the subsidiary on the date of acquisition is 1,28,000. And how much holding company has paid for purchasing these shares? It was given here as 1,40,000. So definitely there is goodwill. So how much is goodwill in this particular case? So goodwill is how much? Cost of acquisition, which is given as 1,40,000, given in the question, minus the share of holding company in the equity of subsidiary on the date of acquisition. That is 1,28,000. Naturally, 12,000 is goodwill because it is positive, means the cost of acquisition is more than the holding company's share in the equity of subsidiary on the date of acquisition. That is all on the date of acquisition we are talking about. That was 1st January 2016. On the same date, whatever the equity of the subsidiary was there, in that the minority shareholding or minority's share was 32,000. That also we calculate. But is it the full minority interest? No. Answer is no. Because they'll have a share in the post-acquisition profits also. But on 1st January 2016, this was the situation. Now what happened? A year has passed by. ABC Limited did its business, whatever it was, and it has earned a profit of 20,000 rupees. So this has earned a profit of 20,000 rupees and then declared and paid a dividend of 15,000 rupees. So simply speaking, this 20,000 rupees is the post-acquisition profit, which is of revenue nature definitely, and a share of this 20,000 should definitely go to minorities also, definitely, because they have 20% of shares in this company. In this profit of 20,000 also, they'll have a share. So how much will be their share in that? This is on the date of acquisition. In the post-acquisition profits, 20% of 20,000 means 4,000 is their share in the post-acquisition profits. That is 36,000 will be the total minority interest as asked in this question. So the question is, what is the amount of minority interest on 1st January and 31st December he asked. On 1st January the minority interest was only 32,000. On 31st December the minority interest is 36,000. That is the answer. Because they got a 4,000 share within the year related to the profit that has been earned during the year. Now that is the other part. Now the other part comes where, of course, in this 20,000, definitely 4,000 belongs to minorities, means how much belongs to the holding company? That is 16,000. That is there. That is revenue profit we are talking. But that entire profit is not there at the end of the year balance sheet. Why? Because the subsidiary has declared a dividend of 15,000. So in this 15,000 dividend, the question is how it has to be treated by the holding company. Okay, declared dividend is 15,000, no problem. But once again, holding company will have how much? Minorities will have how much? 80 and 20%. So 3,000 will be minorities. Naturally, 12,000 will be related to holding company. So the treatment for dividend should be related to holding company as 12,000 rupees only. What should be the entry he is asking? For dividend to be recorded in the books of XYZ Limited, it will receive money. So bank account debtor to P&L account. Amount is 12,000. That's all. That is the treatment for dividend in the books of XYZ Limited, because the dividend it has received is from the post-acquisition profits, which is related to the current year profits. So it was clear in the question. A lot of times it so happens, it will be difficult to identify dividend is declared out of pre-acquisition profits or post-acquisition profits. If it is given in the question, then definitely we can consider it according to whatever the information given in the question. Like in this question, it said that during this year, ABC Limited earned 20,000 and at the year end declared and paid a dividend of 15,000. So very much it looks like it has declared dividend from current year profits only, which are of revenue nature. Definitely yes. But in certain questions, it will not be that clear. And in certain questions, the dividend might be paid out of partly for pre-acquisition profits and partly post-acquisition profits. That is also possible. Then what we have to do is we have to split them into pre and post-acquisition dividends using time basis. That is the only best way rather than taking any other assumptions. Practically, the best way of dividing the pre and post acquisitions dividend is time basis. In this case, such situation did not arise. Why? Because the acquisition happened in the beginning of the year. Dividend was declared at the end of the year. What if the same question, dividend was declared at the beginning of the year itself? Then definitely that is not related to post-acquisition profits. That will be very clearly pre-acquisition profits. That means whatever dividend that the subsidiary would have declared, that would be treated as capital in nature, and that should have been reduced from the cost of acquisition of shares of holding company related to subsidiary company. That is the treatment of dividend. It all depends upon the information that is given in the question. But just for understanding purposes, though we have the answer for it, what is this 3000? This is the dividend portion of minority interest. This is part of this 4000 because we did not split the minority interest into reserves and dividend. Totally, ABC Limited earned a profit of 20,000 and we took 20% of it as 4,000. But it is not the case, right? It has given a dividend also. So 20,000 is a profit. If it has declared a dividend of 15,000, definitely the remaining P&L account balance will be 5,000, right? Minorities will have a share in this also, this also. How much they will have in this? That is this 3,000 we are talking about. And in this they have 20%, means 5,000, 20%, 1,000. Total share is 4,000. That's what we took here. But we don't need to do this. Just for understanding, we are just trying to break it up. The 4,000 into 3,000 related to that portion of dividend. 1,000 is the minority's share in the P&L account balance of the subsidiary on the date of consolidation. But doesn't matter. Minority interest is not something that we are going to give them or anything is going to happen to that. Once again, always we have to keep in mind, we are only doing a reporting here. Minority interest is, we don't know who they are also. There will be thousands of them, lakhs of them, we don't know. So it's all about showing the correct number under minority interest that matters. Is this 4,000 a share of dividend also? Is this a share of balance sheet, P&L account balance also? Yes, both it is. Put together only it is 4,000. So any point here in this chapter has to be very clearly observed in the question. Then we have to dissect it according to the information and requirement of the question carefully. Now let us look at all the questions are answered in this. They asked to calculate minority interest. Yes, we did. Was there any goodwill or capital reserve? Yes, we did. We calculated 12,000. Minority interest on two dates was asked to be calculated. Yes, we calculated 32,000 and 36,000. Then next question says H Limited acquired 3,000 shares in S Limited at a cost of 4,80,000 rupees on 31st of July 2016. See, now this is the date difference. 31st July they have acquired. Important point to note, date. And they acquired 3,000 shares. Capital of S Limited consisted of 5,000 shares. In that they acquired 3,000 shares. So first and foremost point is, how much is the share of H Limited in S Limited? That should be first found out. That is 60%. So naturally minority interest is how much? Minority interest will be 40%. First of all, we have to identify these facts very carefully and correctly. Date of acquisition is given 31st December 2016. And the profit and loss account of this company for 2016, the word used. 2016 means naturally only calendar year. If it was financial year, it should have been given like 16, 17, 15, 16 like that. So they are using calendar year. Showed an opening balance of 1,25,000 and profit for the year was 3 lakhs. So profit for the year was 3 lakhs and opening balance was 1,25,000. So opening balance means when naturally on 1/1/2016 the P&L account had a balance of how much? 1,25,000 and during the year profit earned was 3 lakhs. This is the point which was given in the question. So ideally there should be end of the year P&L account balance of 4,25,000 ideally, normally speaking. But no, the story is not same. The story is that at the end of the year, it declared a dividend of 40%. So 40% dividend it has declared at the end of the year. That is on 31st December 2016. So the question definitely comes now. Out of this dividend, whatever is declared by S Limited to H Limited, how much will be related to the pre-acquisition period and how much will be related to the post-acquisition period? That is what is important to ascertain. But before going into that, first let us understand how much is this 40% dividend means. 40% of what? Naturally 40% of face value of the share. So each share will get how much dividend? 40 rupees dividend. 100 rupees face value, 40% means 40 rupees dividend. Like that, totally how much dividend this S Limited would have declared? 5,000 shares it has. That means it would have declared 2 lakhs rupees dividend. But we don't bother about it because we are only interested in how this has to be treated in the books of H Limited. So how many shares H Limited owns is only 3,000 shares. So how much dividend H Limited would receive? 40 rupees into 3,000 shares means 1,20,000 rupees. 1,20,000 rupees is the dividend that H Limited has received. That's it. Now, the question comes, out of this 1,20,000, how much is pre-acquisition dividend and how much is post-acquisition dividend? We cannot distinguish, right? Money doesn't have that kind of distinction. How do you know that? From which profits they have declared? They have already opening balance of 1,25,000, which were there already even before the acquisition. And after the 1/1/2016, they got a profit of 3 lakhs rupees during the year. But acquisition happened on not at the beginning of the year, but at the middle of the year. So, from which profits they declared dividend, how do we know? So, naturally, we have to understand when the dividend is declared at the end of the year, and if the profits for the year are sufficient, logically, we have to always think that this dividend, whatever this 2 lakhs dividend was declared, it was declared from the 3 lakhs profit that has been earned during the year. This is not an assumption. This is what we observe, and we should always consider like that only. Because when there are current year profits, why would you use reserves? Companies Act does not permit to use the reserves, just like that. When you have current year profits, when your current year profits are not sufficient to declare the dividend, then it is a different story. Such situations also might arise. But now we cannot jump to conclusion that maybe they have declared dividend from 1,25,000. No, they are not declaring dividend from 1,25,000. This is completely something which already was a reserve in their balance sheet. Okay, you call it P&L account balance, but still that is also a reserve. That's a part of the reserves and surplus. But when they had a profit of 3 lakhs rupees during the year and they declared a dividend of only 2 lakhs rupees, definitely they have declared this from 3 lakhs. That is for sure. There should not be any second thought on that. Then question comes, okay boss, they declared dividend out of the profits of the current year only. But as far as holding company is concerned, it did not purchase the shares of subsidiary at the beginning of the year. So this 3 lakhs rupees, whatever the profit that the subsidiary has earned, is it entirely pre-acquisition profit or post-acquisition profit? Or does it have both? Definitely it has both. Why? Because this 3 lakhs rupees is earned in the year. This 3 lakhs is earned in the year. That is for the entire period of 12 months. But in that, there is pre-acquisition profit also, post-acquisition profit also. Because the acquisition happened on 31st July, which means 7 months. 7 months. So 3 lakhs into 7 by 12. That is 1,75,000 related to pre-acquisition profit, and 3 lakhs into 5 by 12, which is after the acquisition. Naturally, 1,25,000 is post-acquisition profit. Assumption here, profits are accrued evenly throughout the year. We cannot take seasonalities into consideration. Not possible. So that is the first point we have to identify. Profit is not completely pre-acquisition, neither it is completely post-acquisition. No, it is not. However, the point here is, we don't need about all these profits pre-acquisition, post-acquisition. We are only observing them. When the dividend is declared out of these same profits, that also has to be distributed or bifurcated into pre and post, right? In which ratio that also has to be distributed? Simply the same ratio, 7 and 5. Because 7 months pre-acquisition, 5 months post-acquisition. We don't need to do all this. This is for understanding purposes. So distribute 1,20,000 into 7 and 5. Naturally, 70,000 is pre-acquisition dividend. 50,000 is post-acquisition dividend. This is the best way of identifying how much is pre-acquisition dividend and how much is post-acquisition dividend. Simply speaking, in a nutshell, we distribute it on time basis, easiest way and best way, provided no other information is given in the question. So 70,000 pre-acquisition, 50,000 post-acquisition. Question was, what is the journal entry is asking. Journal entry is simple. You received. How much H Limited is going to receive? 1,20,000 rupees it is going to receive. So bank account at our, how much? 1,20,000 to investment account. You are reducing the cost of investment with the pre-acquisition dividend, that is 70,000, to our own P&L account. That will be 50,000. So this is the journal entry that has to be written in the books of holding company when they receive this dividend of 1,20,000 rupees. Okay, that is a pre-acquisition and post-acquisition dividend treatment. But let us just use the same question for understanding of, once again, say cost of control or goodwill or capital reserve. For that purpose, we have to know how much will be the profit and loss account balance on the date of acquisition. But if we just consider that, again the profit of 3 lakhs rupees being earned in time basis 7:5, definitely we can consider what would have been the profit and loss account balance on the date of acquisition, that is 31st July 2016. Just for understanding purposes, this was not asked in the question. So what was the cost of acquisition of these 3,000 shares? It was given as 4,80,000. That's okay. 4,80,000 is the cost of acquisition. Then, how much is the holding company's share in the equity of the subsidiary company on the date of acquisition? First of all, what is the equity of the company? Equity share capital of the subsidiary. That was 5 lakhs, isn't it? 5,000 into 100. In that 60% means definitely 3 lakhs is the holding company's share in the equity share capital of subsidiary. But not only that, holding company's share will be there even in the profit and loss account opening balance on 1st January 2016 itself, 1,25,000, which we did not touch. So that 1,25,000 also will have 60% of it. That comes to 75,000. That is in the 1,25,000 opening balance of P&L account at the beginning of the year. But the story is not over. Why? Because here the pre-acquisition profits of 1,75,000 also are capital profits. They are also capital profits. The share of holding company in that also has to be considered as reduction of cost of investment. But here we can do this or observe this in different ways. If we do already the profits, then we don't need to once again take care of dividend, because dividends are already declared out of those profits only. But if we take profits after the declaration of dividend, then we can take them separately. But as I said already, there is no need of doing separately, since the profit of 3 lakhs rupees is already distributed in time basis. We can easily identify 1,75,000 is the pre-acquisition profit. So 1,75,000 into 60% will be 1,05,000. That belongs to H Limited holding company. So these are the various things that holding company has its share in the equity of subsidiary on the date of acquisition. It has a share in its equity capital and 1,25,000 profits on 1/1/2016, and during the year 3 lakhs profits. In that pre-acquisition portion was 175. In that 60% of 175 is 1,05,000. So what comes here as a result of this? There is no goodwill or capital reserve. Nil. Exactly, they paid the same amount what they were supposed to pay. 4,80,000 minus 4,80,000. No goodwill, no capital reserve. That is one thing we can observe from this question. Once again, for understanding purposes. Now we can even understand the minority interest from the same question. Minority interest, let us take at the end of the year, that is on 31st December 2016. On 31st December 2016, that is a consolidation date, how much could be the minority interest, that we can find out. But this will have a process one by one. First of all, share in the equity share capital of the subsidiary. This has 3 lakhs, the holding company. Naturally, remaining 2 lakhs will be for minorities, that is 40% of 5 lakhs equity share capital. Share in equity share capital of subsidiary company, that is 40% of 5 lakhs. That comes to 2 lakhs, which is their standard already. Same way, this share of profits on 1/1/2016, which we have 60% representing 75,000. Naturally, the remaining 50,000 will be related to minorities. That will be given to them, because that profit on the beginning of the year, as given in the question, was 1,25,000. In that, 60% goes to H Limited, 40% goes to minority. So 40% of 1,25,000 is naturally 50,000. That is another one. And then not only that, during the year after this, there were profits of 3 lakhs rupees. Again, for minorities also, do we need to distinguish into pre-acquisition, post-acquisition? We can do that unnecessarily and increasing the workings, but end of the day, it will be ultimately given to them only. It belongs to them only. So we don't need to really worry about all that. Straight away, we can take 40% of 3 lakhs. 40% of 3 lakhs is how much? 1,20,000. That's it. So the total is 3 lakhs 70,000 will be the minority interest on 31st December 2016. Like this, from the data, we should be calculate everything. Minority interest, goodwill, treatment, of course, is what is the question here particularly related to. From the data, conceptually, we should be able to calculate everything. But just for understanding purposes only, not required that way. 50,000 is clear. That is 75 plus 50 was 1,25,000. 3 plus 2 was 5 lakhs share capital. Now let us split this 1,20,000 so that we can understand that also. Why? Because for the holding company we did that. Just for understanding, what is this 1,20,000 all about? Now, first of all, the pre-acquisition dividend, as we already have identified, the pre-acquisition profit was 1,75,000, not dividend, 1,75,000. In that 1,75,000, 40%. 1,75,000 into 40% is 70,000. Right? So that was pre-acquisition. and the total of these two will be naturally 1,75,000. That is related to pre-acquisition profits within the 3 lakhs only. Then post-acquisition will be how much? Naturally 125. In that how much comes to minorities? So 125 into 40%. That is 50,000 will come to minorities, and that is the total, right? That is 1,20,000. So for understanding how this 1,20,000 has come, we can identify. Then again, for understanding, we can even go further here about this 1,25,000 post-acquisition. Pre-acquisition is done, 175. Out of that, 105 we reduced it from cost of control, 70 we added to minority interest. That is done. What about this post-acquisition 1,25,000? Out of this post-acquisition 1,25,000, 50,000 is belonging to minorities. That is gone. Remaining is how much? 75,000. Again, in 75,000, already 50,000 was treated as the dividend received. So remaining 25,000 will be added also to the P&L account of holding company. Like this, for every rupee we need to know the account. That is accounting. We should know exactly where from it is coming, where it is going, nothing else. And ultimately our job will be to redraft the balance sheet using the information that is given in the question. Then, after so many types of adjustments that we discussed already, another possibility is there to be asked in the questions is revaluation can happen of the fixed assets. That's okay. Revaluation is definitely always capital item. It's a capital profit or loss. So it has to be treated accordingly. So the minorities share will be added to the minorities, and share in the revaluation profit or loss, whatever it is, of the assets of the subsidiary related to the holding company will have to be adjusted in cost of control. That's it. But what if this fall or raise of revaluation happens after the date of acquisition? Then definitely it is a revenue item. So logic is always the same. Revaluation normally happens on the date of acquisition or prior to the date of acquisition. So under general circumstances, revaluation profit or loss is always a capital item. Some portion will go to minorities, some portion will be adjusted in goodwill calculation or cost of control calculation. Post acquisition, if there is any revaluation, that is always a revenue item that can be done with the P&L account adjustment. But main point is not just that. Here, when the revaluation happened, the depreciation that is supposed to be charged should be on the revalued amounts. But if the subsidiary did not make the depreciation adjustments or did not revalue them in their books of accounts, then we have to give effect to that. So the main point is the depreciation related to the assets, that is revalued assets, that has to be adjusted. How it has to be adjusted? Normally it will be definitely adjusted from the date of acquisition. So normally it will be post acquisition period only. So it has to be adjusted in the assets of the subsidiary. When is that? When they have not accounted for the revaluation. If they already accounted for revaluation, if they already adjusted depreciation, what is there for us to do? Nothing. That is why such will not be the case. Definitely there will be something for us to do. So our job will be, first of all, to increase or decrease the value of the assets. So assets have to be adjusted. Assets of whom? Naturally subsidiary. See, for holding company there is nothing. All these things are coming from subsidiary to holding. So assets of subsidiary have to be adjusted values according to the revaluation figures given, and depreciation also will have to be adjusted once again. Like what? Definitely. One adjustment will be for asset and other adjustment naturally will be for P&L. Same thing, what we know, nothing special. For any additional depreciation that we need to provide, asset account has to be reduced, P&L account has to be increased. P&L account has to be debited. So asset account has to be credited. Then, if any depreciation already provided at a very higher rate in the subsidiary because they did not adjust for revaluations, already depreciation was high, then we have to reduce the depreciation. means asset account has to be increased. So debit asset account and credit P&L account. So the depreciation adjustment is always between asset and P&L account. If the subsidiary did not account for revaluation of the fixed assets, but revaluation itself is always adjusting the assets upwards or downwards. Asset is adjusted upwards, so definitely asset has to be increased. That's okay. But credit where, sir? Credit will be given to two people. One, because it is a capital profit, it will be given to the holding company's cost of control adjustment. Two, second part, minority's share of this will be added to the minority interest. So, revaluation is one part. Treatment of depreciation on the revalued amount of the assets is another part. Both of them might have to be treated in the questions as given. Now look at this another example. EXE Limited acquires 70% of equity shares of Z Limited, let us say X Limited Z Limited, as on 31st March 2017, okay, at a cost of 70 lakhs. Fine. The following information is available from the balance sheet of Z Limited as on 31st March 2017. That is the date of acquisition, 31st March 2017, and holding company has acquired 70% of the shares of the subsidiary. Asset values are given: fixed assets, investments, current assets, loans and advances, and debentures, current liabilities. Lot of times people do mistake with this. Loans and advances. Loans and advances is what? Asset or liability? That is asset, not a liability. So be careful. These are all assets. These two are liabilities. First, that we should know. Then, the following revaluations have been agreed upon, not included in the figures above. That means we have to do this. Fixed assets are going to be revalued upwards by 20%. Investments are to be revalued downwards by 10%. So only these two have some revaluation. Okay, we'll do that. Then, Z Limited declared and paid a dividend of 20% on its equity shares as on 31st March 2017. And EX Limited has purchased the shares of Z Limited at the rate of 20 rupees per share. And calculate the amount of goodwill or capital reserve on acquisition of shares of Z Limited. So here if you observe, the cost of acquisition is given 70 lakhs, that's fine. What is the share in the equity of subsidiary on the date of acquisition? We don't know the equity share capital or reserves of subsidiary. Then how? What is the meaning of equity? That is nothing but net assets. That is nothing but assets minus liabilities. So all that we need to do is, we just need to calculate the net asset value of Z Limited on the date of acquisition. For that purpose, we have to do revaluation. Fixed assets have to be going upwards by 20%. So 120 lakhs upwards by 20% means they become 144. Okay. Then investments are to be downwards by 10%. Okay. That becomes 49.5. Then current assets are same as 70. Nothing is mentioned. Loans and advances same as 15. These are all assets. From that deduct liabilities. Nothing is mentioned about them. So debentures 90 and current liabilities 50. Deduct these two. What we'll get is net assets. That is the value, right? That is the equity. That's what is shareholders' funds. Assets minus liabilities ultimately. Assets minus outside liabilities. So how much is the assets here? Total of it? 144, 49.5, 70, 15. That is 278.5. $278.5. That is a total of assets of subsidiary company according to the revalued amounts on the date of acquisition. This is 140, total of liabilities. So naturally, how much will be the net asset value of the subsidiary company on the date of acquisition? 138.5 lakhs. But that will not belong to entirely X Limited because it has acquired only 70% of it. So what is the share of equity of holding company in the subsidiary on the date of acquisition as we need it, 138.5 into 70%, that comes to 96.95 lakhs is the share of holding company in the equity of subsidiary on the date of acquisition. It's not given directly, we have to calculate it, which we did. Now, there is no consolidation process here. We are only talking about date of acquisition. Date of consolidation is not required and not there also. But on the same day, which is the date of acquisition 31st March 2017, Z Limited declared and paid a dividend of 20% on its equity shares. So the point here once again is, dividend declared on the date of acquisition itself. So how can it be post-acquisition? Not possible. Definitely that is a pre-acquisition dividend. So pre-acquisition dividend is of capital in nature. Definitely. So how much dividend the holding company would have received? Because the dividend declared was, dividend declared was 20%, not 20 rupees. 20 rupees is purchase price. 20% on its equity shares. And how much is the face value of equity shares? That is also not there, but we can find it out. How? Because it is mentioned that X Limited purchased the shares of Z Limited at a cost of 70 lakhs. See, when it has purchased the shares of worth 70 lakhs, for 70 lakhs, by paying 20 rupees per share, how much? How many number of shares that X Limited has purchased that of Z Limited? How many number of shares? 70 by 20. That is 3.5 lakhs shares. Right? So 3.5 lakhs shares represent 70%. That means remaining 30% is naturally 1.5 lakhs. That means total of number of shares that Z Limited had is 5 lakhs shares. That is there. That is 5 lakh shares. But still the face value of shares of Z Limited is not given. We can know the number of shares. Cost is different, face value is different. Cost is 70 lakhs. How many number of shares? 3.5 lakhs shares. So information is not there about the face value of the shares of subsidiary. So let us take it as 10 rupees. There is no option. If it is not given, let us take it as 10 rupees. And 20% dividend on 10 rupees means that is 2 rupees per share. So this 2 rupees per share X Limited would have received. Like that, how much of dividend it would have received? 2 rupees into 3.5 lakhs number of shares. So 7 lakhs rupees dividend it would have received from the Z Limited. Now the point is, the cost of acquisition was 70 lakhs. It received a dividend of 7 lakhs rupees. It received a dividend of 7 lakhs rupees, which is related to pre-acquisition period. So when there is a dividend related to pre-acquisition period, that is of capital in nature. And what is the treatment for that? That should be reduced from the cost of investment. So what is the real cost of investment for X Limited is only 63 lakhs, not 70 lakhs. So 63 lakhs is the only cost of acquisition for X Limited, because though it has paid 70 lakhs, it has got in return the dividend of 7 lakhs also, which is a pre-acquisition dividend that is reduced from the cost of investment. So the point is, it's a share of 96.95 lakhs. For that purpose, it paid only 63 lakhs. Paid less or more, definitely paid less. So definitely there is a capital reserve of 33.95 lakhs. That is the answer for this question. What was asked is that only. Goodwill or capital reserve. 33.95 lakhs is the capital reserve. First we should find out what is the net asset value of subsidiary on the date of acquisition. In that, what is the holding company share? That came to 96.95. Then, how much dividend the holding company would have received from the subsidiary? It should have received 7 lakhs dividend, but it paid 70 lakhs rupees to purchase the shares. That means effectively the cost of acquisition is not 70 lakhs, only 63 lakhs. So reduce that from the share of holding company in the equity of subsidiary on the date of acquisition. Remaining is capital reserve, that is 33.95 lakhs. That is how this calculations have to be done. Now, let us also just quickly go through some of the other adjustments which will be required to solve the questions for preparation of consolidated balance sheet, like intra-group transactions. Of course, when there is intra-group transaction, if we are preparing a consolidated profit and loss account, all of them have to be just eliminated. Sales of one company becomes purchase of other company. They have to be eliminated in both companies. But the question comes about unrealized profit. Already we discussed this also. But in a little detailed manner, let us understand this. So there are two types of transactions possible, upstream and downstream. Upstream means where the subsidiary company is selling goods to the holding company at profit naturally, and holding company has them in its inventories at the time of consolidation. So one point always for sure, upstream, downstream, doesn't matter. Definitely the unrealized profit has to be reduced from inventories on the balance sheet date, whether the inventory is lying with subsidiary company or holding company. Why? Because when we say consolidation, it doesn't make any difference. All assets of both the companies have to be combined. So decrease in the inventories is common. Only question comes, what is the other aspect? Other aspect will be depending upon who made profit. In the upstream transaction, subsidiary has sold goods to the holding company, that is upstream. That means who made profit? Subsidiary made profit. Can we say that in this entire profit belongs to holding? No. Out of that, some belongs to holding company, some belongs to minority interest. So that will be eliminated from the holding company's profit also and minority interest also. Both have to be adjusted. If profit was made by subsidiary company, which is unrealized profit. Downstream means holding company selling goods to subsidiary, but subsidiary has them in its inventories at the end of the year. Will be eliminated from inventories, no problem. But who made profit? Holding company made profit. There is no point of minority interest. It is already included in the holding company's P&L account. That will be eliminated from the holding company's P&L account in full. So, depending upon the nature of transaction, adjustment for intra-group transactions has to be done, particularly related to unrealized profits. This can be applied here. Look at this case. A Limited holds 80% of the equity capital and voting power in B Limited, and A Limited sells inventories. So who is holding, who is subsidiary? First we have to identify. A Limited is the holding and B Limited is the subsidiary. Okay. And A Limited holds 80% of shares in B Limited. Fine. A Limited sells inventories costing 180 lakhs. A sells to B at a price of 200 lakhs. So this is sale already happened. The entire inventories remain unsold. Entire inventories. Normally it will not happen, but in this case, entire inventory remain unsold with B Limited at the financial year end, that is 31st March 2019, whatever it is. So this entire 200 lakhs is there in the inventories of B Limited. The profit of 20 lakhs which is made by A Limited would have been accounted for by A Limited already, because it sold the goods to B Limited already. So this is a normal downstream transaction, we can say. Subsidiary holding company selling goods to subsidiary company having them in its balance sheet. So here, how much is unrealized profit? First of all, that is 20 lakhs. What should be the entry or accounting treatment, we can say? First of all, who made profit we have to identify. Who made profit here? A Limited made profit. So we have to reduce the profit of A Limited, which it would have already created to the P&L in the balance sheet. So P&L account has to be reduced, it means P&L has to be debited and inventories have to be credited. So the point here is both profits and inventories have to be reduced, eliminated by 20 lakhs rupees, because the entire stock is anyway there at the end of the year. That is the first scenario. Second scenario, A Limited holds 75% of the equity capital and voting power in B Limited, and A Limited purchases inventories from B Limited, means B Limited is selling goods to A Limited, but still A Limited is the holding company, B Limited is the subsidiary company. This is subsidiary company, and A Limited holds 75% of B Limited. There is all information already given. B Limited sold goods to A Limited. A Limited purchases goods from B Limited at a price of 200 lakhs, which are originally costing 150 lakhs only. Entire inventories remain unsold. Okay, entire inventories remain unsold. We know the unrealized profit already. That is 50 lakhs. 200 lakhs is the sale price, but original cost was only 150 lakhs. Who has the inventories? A Limited has the inventories. At what price it would have recorded? 200 lakhs, because that's what it paid for. But really the cost to the group is only 150 lakhs. So this 50 lakhs definitely has to be eliminated from the inventories of A Limited for sure, no doubt. But the question is, profit in this, who made? B Limited made. B Limited is subsidiary. So can we just eliminate the profit of B Limited from A Limited's P&L account at the time of consolidation? No. So B Limited's profit and loss account would be already more by 50 lakhs. We have to reduce that, definitely yes. But to what extent it will be affected in the A Limited's consolidated financial statements? In that 75% only. 75% of 50 lakhs means 37.5 lakhs will be treated as reduction from the profit of A Limited's share in B Limited's profits, and the remaining 12.5 has to be reduced from minority interest. So profits have to be adjusted 50 lakhs, no doubt. Who will have how much share is the question. Naturally, because the subsidiary has made the profit, 37.5 lakhs will be adjusted in the holding company's consolidated financial statements P&L account balance, and 12.5 lakhs will be adjusted with minority interest. That is how the treatment has to be done in case subsidiary made the profit. Minority interest also gets affected, that's all. That is a point here to be noted. These are various items everybody should be very thorough with before we actually start solving the questions related to consolidated financial statements. In the next session, we'll prepare consolidated balance sheets using this conceptual knowledge only. Without this conceptual understanding, solving or preparing the consolidated balance sheet will become difficult and more messy. With the conceptual knowledge, everything will be very simple. Ultimately, it is all about plus minus, debit credit. We have two tallied balance sheets and we just have to combine them with some good adjustments and then finally come out with a tallied consolidated balance sheet. That is our target. For that, we might have to do all these things. We might have to calculate goodwill or capital reserve. We might have to calculate minority interest. We might have to distinguish the profits into pre-acquisition and post-acquisition profits. We might have to treat the dividend that is declared by the subsidiary as, once again, pre-acquisition dividend and post-acquisition dividend. And we might have to eliminate the intergroup transactions. Unrealized profits will have to be eliminated also. Like this, many adjustments are required to be done before the final consolidated balance sheet comes out. That is possible only when we really understand each of them. Same way, revaluation of assets and liabilities can also happen. That will have to be affected. And post the revaluation, depreciation adjustments if required, they have to be done. Anything can be asked in the questions, but in general, at intermediate level, these are the major points which will be asked in the questions. If we are clear with these points, mostly it will be comfortable. We can solve the questions related to consolidated balance sheet comfortably. Ultimately, our objective is to prepare a consolidated one balance sheet from the two balance sheets that will be given to us. At intermediate level, only two will be given, one holding, one subsidiary. Final level will have multiple subsidiaries, chain holdings, cross holdings. We don't need to get into that. There is still time for it. It has to be done definitely at that level also, but that can be done later. Right now, our focus will be to use this conceptual understanding of various items in preparation of consolidated balance sheet first. P&L account and all is not a big deal. It can be done very easily compared to this. So that we can push it to the end of this chapter. But before reaching that level, before reaching there, we have to prepare consolidated balance sheet very comfortably. And in the next session, we'll solve some of the questions straight to prepare consolidated balance sheet. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.